Hello and welcome back to the Court of Beards and Bourbon. This is the hangout crew that has been guiding through a lot of great Sarah J. Maas reading up until now. There's a playlist in my channel here that you can go back if you're looking for breakdowns of any specific Sarah J. Maas book. Most likely it's down there. The Court of Thorns, oh my gosh. Thorns and Roses, that's all done. We're caught up on that one. So now we've moved over to the Throne of Glass. So this tonight would be part 3 in the Throne of Glass. So if you're completely unfamiliar with all of that, I recommend go grab you some books, pick up some books, check out some good reading. But if you are a fan or if you want to learn a little more about it, this is the show to watch. This is the live stream hangout where we are going through and breaking it all down for you and having a good fun time. And by we, the partner in crime for all of this has been the one, the only, the Bearded Comic Bro.
Hold on.
Oh yeah. I'll finish eating here.
Yeah. Sorry. One more page.
Ooh, you do you, buddy. You do you, buddy.
Good. All right. Done. All right.
Yay.
It has been a trek for us to get here. So because
the hilarity is we were hanging out and we were ready to read this in Portland like weeks ago,
like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. But I had it there. I was ready to go.
Same.
And then we just didn't do any reading.
No, there's a lot more hanging out and playing silly games and going and looking at.
And you never know when you get a bunch of nerds together, like, will they actually be social or will they just read? And you got to be prepared.
Yeah. So I immediately on getting back, I basically crashed into this thing.
Yeah.
And read it incredibly quickly. You were reading it this week. You were powering through this like Thursday night.
I kind of put it off just because I didn't know how fast we were reading it. And then I got caught up in the Dungeon Crawler series that I've been doing, and that's a thick book.
Yeah, it is.
Well. Also no smut in that, but so I was like trying to read that, and then like as like I have like quarter of that book left. You and JP both were like done. I'm like, well, crap. And I was like, all right, well. So then I was like, I'll finish it this week. So I literally read this in basically like 4 days this week. So.
And when did you finish? Was it today or yesterday?
I finished last night. So I was on the plane and I had about 200 pages starting Thursday. And then I read it Thursday morning a little bit on some breaks during the conference. And then I had a good 2 hours, 3 hours on a plane. So I was like, I'm fine. So I wasn't worried.
Nice. Good work. So if you're unfamiliar with Greg, his channel link is down below. He just did a phenomenal interview with Brian Michael Bendis.
I did.
Yo, gang, like, how are you not following this guy? If you're a comic book fan like me, that's absolutely worth your time. So there you go. If for no other reason than an amazing interview with Brian Michael Bendis. So link for this guy right down below. But we got other guests because the whole Throne of Glass universe, we've brought along the guide of guides, the gentleman who has been with us from the jump here to kind of give us some advice. He's already, our Rowan, right? Training us, beating on us, keeping secrets from us, as
not letting us know the full story.
No.
We're
like little babes in the wood here. We were talking about Paul, Florida Gulf Coast Big O. Paul, what's going on, man?
What's going on? I have to co-sign before we get into anything else.
Yeah.
I read the first Dungeon Crawler Carl in 3 days while I was on jury duty a couple weeks ago. So I can't wait to do more of this.
Yes.
Yeah. So
well, if you thought the last book I showed you was thick, the newest one I have to read is 680 pages.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
I've seen some of them. I haven't had a chance to pick up any of the next ones. But thank you. I appreciate the connection to Rowan. I wish I was as good looking as that guy, but I'll do what I can to keep you guys in mystery here.
I mean, obviously, Greg and I are just as handsome as Selena, so I mean, It worked. Like the analogy worked. Really
I literally will only picture you now, Paul, when I read Rowan.
I'm gonna get a little face tattoo for us.
There it is.
Ooh, little Mike Tyson.
Just wear it. Just make sure it gets added whenever whenever we jump on and talk.
Yeah. And of course, Paul's link is down below as well. His Instagram, his YouTube, it's all down there as well. However, there's been this, I will say, dog chasing us, snipping at my heel to catch up. He's gone through and read all the first trilogy of books from Court of Thorn and Roses, and then jumped over to Selena's world, and he's powered through the first 3 here and was like twiddling his thumbs, like, catch up, John, catch up. Like, what's going on? This guy who has gone completely into the Sarah J. Maas verse here.
He has fallen into the Maas verse.
And yet still seems to be deeply searching for something. Let's bring on JP, still looking for Smut.
It's got to be in here somewhere. That's what I heard. This is all there was no Smut put down. Like, I can't find it. I've read this. What's the problem?
Got the wrong book. Got the wrong book.
It's a classic teaser in comics where it's like, you'll never guess who is Red X. And then you're like, oh, they're going to reveal Red X in this issue. Nope. And then it's next issue. They're like, you'll get there. Don't worry, JB.
Nope.
They'll be smart. And they're like, nope, not this book.
Nope.
Not this book.
I've been lied to.
Disappointing. Yep.
I just want to say, for all those in our audience, that John and Bearded got done with their last show about a fantasy novel about teenage women and fantasy romance book, and they thought, you know what our breakdown needs? More testosterone, because we do not have enough.
Understand.
We do not have enough men breaking down these books.
Yeah, I mean, this is
clearly... we probably don't have enough men breaking down these books because I've watched the reviews on YouTube. So we're bringing, whether people want it or need it, we're bringing the demographic to the world that is not needed in any capacity of four white dudes talking about.
Let's mansplain Sarah J. Maas. Well, this is the Court of Beards and Bourbon, right? Yeah. This is a male perspective, I suppose, on the Maas verse, or just like people who clearly love fantasy literature and fantasy stories, getting back into a world that maybe we've been absent from. So for me, and I know JP, this is true for you as well. Like, I read a ton of fantasy books when I was younger, and then when I got into comics again as an adult, like, I took a massive break from it until these books brought me back to it. So, I mean, that for me, that's been the bigger fun of this, is like diving into another wonderful universe, like, you know, Tolkien or Good Kind.
It's been a long time since I dove into a fantasy like series like this. So
right.
It's been a long time. So
for sure. And I don't know if that was the same for you, Greg.
I actually kind of strayed away from fantasy, and mostly in movies and books. Like, it's not my wheelhouse typically. I just want to
even
be
when
loved.
You were younger.
Yeah, even when I was younger. So I just wanted to be loved and appreciated. And so when I saw you were doing this, I was like, notice me, recognize me, see me.
You're trying to hang out with the cool kids, is what you're saying.
So I was like, yeah, guys, I love fantasy. Like,
mistakes.
Yeah, let's do this. Yeah. So
you're like,
I mean, I haven't not read very much fantasy, so this is new to me.
Okay. And how about you, Paul? What was your experience as far as like fantasy literature to this point?
For a while, it's very similar, taking a break kind of through college and early marriage and stuff. And since I got back into comics with the kids, trying to get them to read more, I started reading more and more and just kind of blossomed back to that. I've replaced all of my old Lord of the Rings books over time, and all of my Hobbit. Like, I've kind of gotten the nicer versions now, because the ones that me and my brother shared growing up, those things are tattered, but we still have them, but they're just they're in rough shape. So
yeah,
I haven't read those books.
Hey man, Tolkien, Martin, there's a lot of good fantasy classics out there that you could dive into.
I did read the first Game of Thrones.
Okay, which is very close to this series' first season.
Yes.
All right, well, let's say hello to some peeps in the chat, and then we'll dive into this novel, Heir of Fire. We got, first though, Ruben Guzman tailgating 30 minutes ago while I was probably busting my way over here.
Well, you were tailgating,
powering food down.
Just a different tailgating.
Yeah. We got the moderator of moderators, Christina Payne, and she's dropped everybody's links into the chat. So if you're looking to subscribe to some people that are on this panel, and you should, Christina's got you covered. The links are down there for everybody. So thank you, Christina, for doing that. Of course, we got Greg, and he can drop his own link. He's got a little wrench there next to his name.
Ooh,
He can do all
it's
that.
a little X-Men logo. Look at that.
May need to give one to Paul because he's in the chat too. There he is. And let's see, we got Bethany in the chat. What's going on? I have Bethany's channel link, Instagram channel, both maybe down below as well. She does some really great crafts on her YouTube channel. And then also she's got a website where she sells crafts that you can buy. Nice. I may have made some purchases that she says is arriving potentially or shipping on Monday next week. So some things heading out into the world. I may have gotten some addresses of some people on this panel. So, some things going on. Of course, JP is in the chat, and he's got that wrench too, so he's dropping it on people. You better be ready.
You get a wrench. You get a wrench. John's the Oprah of wrenches. You get a wrench.
Hardly ever been the
case. Hey, Paul, do me a favor. Look underneath your seat.
Yeah,
there's a wrench underneath there.
You've been wrenched. Another fantasy adjacent friend here. We've got Sharon from the Life with Two YouTubers. Her daughter, fantasy novelist Rena Brown, amazing writer and self-published author. You should check out their stuff. And Rena can drop that link, and so can Sharon. So if they've got some links they want to share for great fantasy writers as well, love to have that in the chat. The other half of Crazy Crafts with Bethany, we've got DJ Wise in the chat. What's going on, DJ Wise? Red X, also a great smut novel. Okay, because we're still looking for some great smut novels. We're enjoying great fantasy novels, but as JP mentioned, maybe a little light there. We've read a lot, JP and I, of good fantasy comics with Sharon and with Fables, the Vertigo series. So that's a nice throwback to those books, which we actually, I think JP, you mentioned there's a couple of trades out now. We can probably
there's one more trade. There's one trade now.
Now that they've done the new round.
Yeah, they came back and did. Yeah. So
what is Big Nasty doing in the chat? He's hanging out. Good to see you, sir. Appreciate you. Who do I got to screw to get a wrench around here? Yeah, it's a wrench convention. Wrench, that's a tough one to say. Okay, so gang, yes, we're talking tonight about Heir of Fire. And Greg and I and Paul had kind of talked about the first two novels, and I just want to kind of get everybody's thoughts before we get into the third book, where you were feeling coming out of those two. Yeah, what's up, Greg?
Freeze. John, this is called A Court of Beards and Bourbon.
Oh, yes.
Mentioned
what are we drinking? What are we sipping tonight, Greg? What do you got? Sorry.
Little Michter's.
Michter's. All right.
Yeah. So shout out to the comic Jabroni. He's always had this bottle. So,
I need to get one of those. I don't know that I've ever tried that brand.
It's good. So
nice. I actually almost grabbed that tonight, but I did not.
Ooh. So I'm technically having whiskey tonight. I've got Jameson in here, as I usually got going.
The family
Paul,
brand.
What are you drinking tonight, Paul? I saw soda, I thought earlier. What are you drinking? Oh, you're muted. Sorry, bud.
Still muted.
Nope, still muted. Can't hear him. Doodaloo. JP, what are you drinking? How about that?
I am drinking
Russell's. Ooh, I don't
is
know
that 10?
Either.
Is that a 10?
No, it's a single barrel.
Okay.
Ooh,
Still
nice.
Yes.
top notch.
Yes.
Am I back?
Hey, there you are.
We're back.
I didn't have a chance. It's been a long week at school this week, so I didn't have a chance to pick up any bourbon. So I have some hazy IPA from the store. So
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
All right, well,
I had
then,
an IPA
cheers
on
to
the
you,
last show
gentlemen.
just on, so pacing myself.
I'm just glad I got some food in me before this, so I, powered that down. So now we can get into it.
Sorry, John, I interrupted you.
You're great. No, that's a good point. I think we've almost forgot last time as well. So I'm glad you brought it back. I was too busy excited for the smut maybe last time.
Rightfully so.
So yeah, my question is, like, as far as the first two novels, I was definitely feeling after the first two novels in Throne of Glass a little underwhelmed. I like the universe, I like some of the concepts, but it felt still like a younger person writing this book. It didn't have a maturity to it yet, and I was like, you know what? I heard rumor that the first two books she had written when she was very young, and that after Thorns and Roses, she kind of had the chance to sort of go back and then add on to that series, and that maybe this third book would be different for me. But I was curious how I know JP I'll start with you. Like, you were a big fan of this universe from those first 2 books.
So I would agree with your assessment that it was definitely, you could tell it was a younger writer in the first 2 books. But I enjoyed this universe, and I enjoyed Selena as a character more than I enjoyed Faerie and the universe and the other books, the other 3 books.
Okay.
The weakness I thought in the books here was not like the setup and everything else, was the supporting cast. I did not think her supporting cast was nearly as strong here as it was in that other series. And I felt like that was for me the biggest weakness. And I think it was just she was struggling to write other characters in a compelling way that didn't take away from, that added to instead of taking away from her main character. I think she was very focused on focused on Selena, and the other characters came off flat to me a little bit. And
it was I mean, most of those other characters were part of that love triangle thing.
Yeah.
And if you were interested in it, then maybe it was something that sucked you in. But if you weren't, maybe wasn't working for you. Okay.
But in terms of like the world and the setup and all that, I actually enjoyed this more, like through the
books. Comparatively, the first 2 and the first 2 from the other.
Series, yes.
Got it. Paul, what about you? Where did you come in as far as these first 2 books, and then interest and desire for the third?
Similar to JP, we had talked a couple times that I really enjoyed the world around Selena, how everything was kind of moving, but I definitely felt like there was something missing, and this third book kind of brought that into light a little bit for me. I like the characters within all of the first 2 books, and I just feel like with this third one, with Heir of Fire, the introduction to some new characters helped it tremendously, for me at least.
Mm-hmm.
This is still probably my favorite of all of the Throne of Glass books.
Oh, wow.
So it definitely hit all the right notes for me.
Sure. Perry is lurking in the chat. What's going on, Perry? I started seeing you in some other streams. It's nice to see you back among the land of the YouTubing. All right, Greg, how about you? Coming out of those first 2 books, I felt like we were on some of the, kind of the same level of interest and passion for these characters.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed the characters a little bit more than what I'm hearing from the panel so far. Of because I was invested in the kind of who's Selena gonna go for. Like, I was like, I'm here for it. I thought, I've said it multiple times. I thought the first book was good. I thought it was very formulaic. Like, I knew what was going to happen. There was going to be no surprises. I loved the second book of being able to open up the world and kind of get to see some stuff there. I really, really dug the second book. So coming out of the second book, I was very excited to see, like, where are we going from here? So that was my kind of takeaway.
Sure. Awesome. No, I can totally agree with that. Derek, what's going on? Thank you for coming by, sir. I appreciate you. All right, then let's give some thoughts. I mean, obviously, Paul, you mentioned how you feel about this third book and your feelings about the universe. I will say, I came away feeling like this was fantastic and absolutely what I needed from this series. I felt like Greg said, the second book expanded the universe. For me, it still felt very closed off. And this was the book for me where I felt like I got a whole world view that was missing for me from the first 2 books. I felt like Selena's story finally had real urgency to it. Like, there was real, like, stakes and important things on the horizon. I think Rowan was a fantastic addition as a character that was not just about, like, trying to get in her bed, but, like, just had his own agenda, had his own thoughts, had his own thing going on. And then, of course, that whole crew of witches and that whole storyline with Manon was really, it just sucked me in. And I was as much as you found them all to be fairly despicable characters in simplest form, the dynamics between the different clans and characters, I felt like expanded the universe wonderfully. Even though it didn't bear a direct impact on the story, it felt compelling, right, in its own sort of way. So Greg, I'll go to you first on this one. Like, what were your thoughts now with this third book?
I'm gonna upset some people here tonight. I'm just gonna be honest here. There's a reason it took me this long to read it. I felt felt the very first 300 pages were very sluggish for me. It wasn't until it got to like the last 200 pages, and that's classic for Sarah J. Maas, right? Like she turns it up at the very end of all her books. For whatever reason, though, maybe it was too much world building for me to like in this book of like I didn't care about the witches at all. Like I had no care for them, and I still didn't like. It was one of those. This is gonna sound bad. I told you I'm gonna burn some bridges here. People are gonna get upset. But like when I'm reading, I'm flipping through the chapters because all the chapters are literally different, different pockets of the universe we're in. Whenever I saw and Manon or the Black Beaks, I was like, shoot. I was like, all right, we'll get through this. Like, all right, here we go.
I love it.
So, and then with that being said, what this book does and where it takes the universe, 100% love it. But the overall experience for me was not as my favorite.
Because
a
step down.
Yeah, because it just like it felt like I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but like even though Selena and Rowan experience, maybe I've just done a disservice to myself that I've been reading so much Sarah J. Maas right now that I felt like I wasn't as invested in here she goes again. Here's another young female protagonist training with this guy who's going to, not like, oh, I don't like you, but I don't like you. And then,
surprise.
That we've seen that a lot in these stories, right? With, the last ACOTAR book that we read, we saw this with the first book with her and Chael. And like, so there's all these moments where I was just like, because of that, I think it bogged me down. Now, maybe if I didn't have that exposure of like, oh, she's training with someone who doesn't. Again, I don't want to say I didn't like the book, but it was just a lot slower read for me because of that. And that's why I literally was like, when you guys were like, we got to get this done. I'm like, Friday, I'll have it done because I was like, I got to give myself a deadline to just finish it.
Yeah. So do you think that Sarah J. Maas, if she has I don't know if she's married, has a significant other, does she need to worry? Do they need to worry about her and her relationship with her personal trainer?
Right.
Yes. That there's something there where like, hey, I'm going to work out again today.
Okay. Wait a second. Do we like our personal trainer?
I read that latest book. It kind of reminded me of this other one you did.
Yeah, big bald dude. Did he have a face tattoo too?
Tell me about that. Yeah. Like, can I meet this guy? Can I meet it? All right. Okay, JP, how about you when it comes to this third book? Where does it impact your enjoyment of this universe?
So I guess I'm the opposite of Greg.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Like it made me enjoy the universe a lot more. I get where he's coming from. Is that I found like the early part of the Rowan Selena stuff to be a little bit repetitive, a little bit formulaic in the fact that like, okay, now we see this character that we've known but she's got these other abilities that she's now training, but I don't know. I just went for the ride on that. In terms of the witches, I thought they were a fantastic addition. I look forward to those chapters way more than anything that started with the name Dorian or Kale.
Oh, no, see, when I saw those,
like, as someone who was team neither through the first two books, is that like neither of these guys were worthy of our main character. I was like, and then Dorian and the little nurse lady, I was just like, oh my God.
Like, John,
stop.
John, hey, I'm glad JP's on his first and final show. Show some respect to my boy Dorian here. Come on.
I found those chapters like if it was a chapter I like looked at, I was like, oh. It was any chapter that started with that little nurse and Dorian.
Sorsha.
Yeah. But overall, like I enjoyed the world building. I liked that she got. I really enjoyed the addition of Aiden. Which is how I'm pronouncing his name. I thought that he brought a dynamic that was way like if I had to list like interesting characters like in the side characters, Rowan and Aiden and Manon and are all way above Dorian and Kale. Like, if I just, those two, they feel flat. They feel, So, but anyway, in terms of this book as an overall, like the world building, I enjoyed the heck out of the world building. I got that we got to see that there was this other, these people that had held themselves separate, and like her learning, her accepting who she is for the first time in this book. Like one of the things that I think was the theme of the first two books that we didn't fully understand why, was she sort of was punishing herself for who she was as much as anything, and running from who she was. And I thought that this book was very effective in terms of even though it was another training montage, I thought it was effective in terms of stepping her forward in her growth. So
nice. Awesome. Okay, Paul, then how about you? Now you've read this entire series at least twice, right?
Kind of. Yeah, for the most part, 2 times through. So
second time through, how was your excitement level going from 2 to 3? Where does 3? You said it ranks top in the Throne of Glass for you.
For me, it does. The first time that I read everything through, the witches with Manon, and it was very similar to kind of how Greg was talking. Like I wasn't looking forward to them as much, but as I went through and got closer to the end of this third book, I realized that they do play a part in everything. And now looking at it again for the second time, it's definitely like you see that character development from, or not even character development, just the character arcs for all of the characters, whether it be the ones that we've established or the new characters in this book, because this is probably where we get the most like main focal kind of characters that are gonna reoccur. This is kind of like a lot of the kind of foundational pieces for those characters, is seeing where they start from at this stage. And then you get to kind of go back and forth. You get some flashbacks later on. You get some, you get to finish through and kind of see where they take themselves. So the character development here, when I second time through, has really like made me appreciate where they all are at right now. So, and that's, I think, again, why this one, the world building, opening everything up, this felt very close to the second Court of Thorns and Roses book, and that was my favorite in that series, where the world building is kind of opening everything up. You're starting to get more characters. The characters that you're getting are complex characters. They're not just flat, which even though Dorian and Kale right now are, integral parts of the story, they're flat right now. They're kind of one note. Kale especially, Dorian not as much, because he's kind of trying to deal with a little bit of the Greg's like, oh no, don't say anything about my boy Dorian. He's dealing with some stuff, so it's at the moment he's got a little bit stuff going on, and then we find out later in this book, like that's where his arc really begins, is what happens to him in this book.
Right.
Gotcha. Well, that's good, because that's kind of where I'm feeling at the end of this third book. Is this feels important, right? A lot of these characters feel important, and their journeys feel important going forward for sure. Obviously, we need to start with Celaena, and at the end of the second book, we learned, or at least were proven factually, what she knew about herself and what had been kind of subtly mentioned up to that point, as far as her heritage, her lineage, the royal background for her family. This book definitely dives 2 feet all the way into that story. And a lot of it has to do with either Celaena's journey, where we see her traveling to a part of the world where fae and these demi-fae characters, and then some human characters, are interacting with each other. This whole other sort of magic royal side of the universe that we hadn't really gotten up to now. Inversely, back in the Throne of Glass, or the Castle of Glass, we have a relative that is connected to that world through and connected with her, leading this duplicitous life, coming back to the castle and basically almost being her stand-in, right? Like being there for her in that place. So I guess like as far as a family goes and as far as this Fae dynamic, I'm kind of curious what you guys felt about that journey for her character and where you kind of clicked in or didn't enjoy what was going on with her. So I guess let's go to Paul this time, because you've read this a ton, but like as far as the family side of this, the royalty side.
Selena, or Aelin, truly is at a point in this book. She recognizes kind of why she feels the way that she does, right? Like she's starting to see that, okay, all of this happened, and she's blaming herself for a lot of it, and that's kind of like, it's almost like a mental block where she's, because of these traumatic things that have happened to her, she's blocked them out, and now she is moving forward as Selena. And then we get the flashbacks towards the end, and we get the little snips here and there about what actually happened. And it's truly, a point of reference for her to kind of be able to step back and say, wait a second, was it really my fault? And we get to learn a little bit more about what happens.
Sure. So. Greg, as far as expanding Selena's story and getting this interesting character back home that seems related to her, but we don't know quite how to trust this individual, and then seeing her aunt and the family relations on the royal side, what were your thoughts about this new world for Selena?
I mean, I think Selena still is the strongest character of the series, as it probably should be, as the focal point of it, and getting to see these moments of who she is. And like Paul talked about, like, she's carrying a lot of pain and baggage and suffering, right? And she's carrying a lot of like regret and questioning of like, am I at fault here? Is, this is why this is, losing my best friend, losing, other important people in her life, the flashback here towards the end, like those things that are kind of coming to light for her as she's processing and dealing with it. There's a lot of, I think we as humans, we are our own worst enemies, and we struggle with stuff, and we put stuff on ourselves a lot often. And that if like we said that to someone, they'd be like, are you serious? Like, you're an idiot. Shut up. Like, no, like that's not your, like, but like we are so self-conscious. Like, it's just how I think we are innately wired. And so like you can, what I always found interesting in this book is you're getting to see it, kind of her process and struggle going through. You're kind of getting to see inside her head a little bit and unpack that. And it's a little bit like a therapy session, if you will, of kind of seeing her kind of go through that. And, and like, you're kind of like, yeah, or like, oh, come on, like give yourself some grace here. Like, so I really enjoyed that dynamic. And I did like having Aiden in the court, so we could still have our throuple with Dorian and Kale and Aiden, and it works. You got, and JP wanted that to happen. He wants a smut, and it didn't happen. So that's probably why he doesn't like Dorian. And like, he's like, come on, Aiden's here. And now
I can give you reasons.
But
all right, well then, JP, what are your thoughts? I mean, obviously we have family for Selena on all these different sides, and clearly almost all of them wanting something from her in one way or another. How did you feel about that expansion to her story?
I thought it was needed, obviously, and I thought it was really well done. I mean, because she's got survivor's guilt, and she is like basically, and she's also dealing with the fact that like she had these very unique powers, like when she was a kid, and basically was that her parents were basically afraid of, and she was taught to kind of be afraid of. And then when they kind of like, she lost control right before everything happened, she took that to blame herself. She's like blamed herself this whole time. And so Selena she hates Aelin. Like, she despises who she is through like when we meet her, and through this, she finally has to like come to terms with who she is and really the truth about what happened. And like, Because that's real. Like, to me, that's the one of the thing is like it's a training arc, but it's really not. It's a therapy arc. It's really about her like getting through her own mental issues. And in terms of like getting to see Aiden was one of my favorite introductions in this book because there's this guy who's basically been living a double life just like she has for the last decade plus to try to figure out a way to protect the best he can what's left of their country. And, and he comes off as, he's living this life that everybody perceives him as a traitor and everything else. And really all he wants. And then like when he gets that sliver of hope that she's alive, that like, yeah, the change that comes through him is really, I thought was really well done too. So,
yeah. No, I very much agree. And for me, watching Celaena have to realize how there are consequences to taking on this mantle legitimately, right? To owning this identity, and whether that's dealing with your awful aunt, whether that's whether that's having people change the way they look at you and the way they act towards you, right? It's very much going to be a game changer when she decides to own that name, right? And she's been so comfortable for so long as this murderess that for her to become a queen or be considered a queen in any way, I think is truly the most terrifying thing for her. And that I found very compelling. It's that point in the hero's journey, right, where they don't want the quest. They're refusing the quest. In her mind, the quest is very much like, I just want to kill everybody. Like I don't want to rule and make people's lives better.
I want to add to that, John, is she wants to kill everybody, including herself.
Yes. Oh yeah, and die in the process.
Yes. Like her process is that, like, okay, I'm just going to take out whoever I can while I go. She doesn't see value in herself during this.
Totally, no, I totally agree, and I think that there's some connection then to what Aiden, as you're calling him, because he clearly feels a lot of the same guilt and regret and sorrow and pain and loss, and is kind of living this lie and feels totally wrapped up in the guilt of it. So there's a similar, as a stand-in for her, that there's some interesting layering and similarities going on there.
What do you call his name? Because you said as you call it. What do you say? Well, no, because you don't say it, Aiden. So what do you say?
Yeah, what do you guys
say? What do you say, John?
That's the way I read
Come on, John.
Adian is what I said. No, I can't hear Big O again.
Adian.
Adian is what I heard, because it's got an ION. So for me, it was an Adian, but that's how I said it. Sorry.
I read it as Aiden. Oh, we lost you for the moment.
He disconnected several things.
Apparently, Paul doesn't like your answer either way, John.
It's okay. I understand.
Because I pronounced Kale Cole, and then you guys are like, "Nope, that's wrong."
So, I mean, I just connected it to a salad because it's something you don't necessarily want, but you probably got to have.
Listen,
it
I don't take my advice on pronouncing names. I can't say any of them.
I don't know. I just read it as Aiden. It could be. Yeah, I'm sure it's not, but
I always read it as Adian.
Adian. Okay.
All right. Yep, so now you're on the right side of the screen here, Paul.
And then
Eoden.
And then Manon.
Okay.
That's
actually how I read it. But John kept saying Manon.
Now I'm only going to think of freaking Muppets now. Thanks, Paul.
Well, since we're talking about her, let's dive into the witch half of this story. We'll finish with Greg on this one because obviously not his favorite portion of the story. But I'm curious for you, JP. First time through, how did you feel about all these witch characters? Because we get this whole side of the story which feels like it's rising up to be, in one way or another, a problem for Celaena, whether they are going head to head with her or whether they're both going after the King of Adarlan and she's just caught in the middle. Like it's interesting how these awful, scary, carnivorous characters are going to behave.
Like early in the book, and I get where Greg maybe like lost the thread with him, because I was like, this seems like a weird choice. Like, why are we spending time with these characters? But I, like, as it went along, I found Manon, like, super compelling and interesting as a character. Here is someone that, like, basically was raised to be the future leader, similar to Selena, but, like, it's like you care about no one. It's like you will be evil. You will be awful. You will treat everyone is beneath you. You are, and yet there's clearly something special about her. And I really found, like, obviously we'd seen the thing about the wings and everything else, and we're like, what is this? And, like, so clearly we're getting some follow through from the first two books about the dark wings and all that kind of stuff. And, like, I think the scene that, like, hooked me into it was when she falls into the pit and the two Wyrens are fighting, and, like, her reaction to what happens there, and the way that, like, she's trying to, like, through the rest of the book, she's trying to understand that whole change in her perspective from that moment. And I found it super interesting and compelling. And the dedication of these witches that are so, like, we care about no one but ourselves, and we're going to, like, eat it. And yet she has developed within her little 13, her coven, way more, like, loyalty than any of the others have, it seems like, in a way. And so I don't know. I found that as it went on, the longer it went on, the more interested I got in it, and to see how they actually are going to ultimately fit in the bigger story.
Sure.
So,
and then Paul, how about you? This whole universe of very intensely violent ladies come into the fray, and they sort of own this little corner of this novel, and I'm assuming a corner of this universe going forward. What first time reading it and versus second time, how did you feel like this injection of new characters worked?
So the first time, kind of like what JP was saying, I definitely agreed a little bit with Greg at the beginning. Like, it's hard to see where this is coming from at the beginning, right? Like, where are we starting in left field, quite literally, of witches chasing people through a farm, like, like, where is this coming from when you're on one continent trying to figure out what's going on with Aelin and Rowan, and on the other continent you got Adian coming into this picture, and then you split off and it's like, oh yeah, hey, there's this crazy, beautifully described witch chasing this guy in the farm. I was like, what? wait, what? So that it took a second, but as that first read through kind of started to play out, it's like, oh, there's a reason that we started with something like that, because you start to see Manon start to question things, right? That cohesiveness and loyalty that JP was just talking about within the 13 start to question things when that cohesiveness and loyalty is at stake, right? Like, is she going to follow through and listen to the High Witch or the matron or whoever it was, her grandmother, or is she going to stay loyal to her group because they're loyal to her? So that questioning the first time through, that's where it started really, like, okay, I got to pay attention. What are they doing? What's going on? And then the second time around is like, okay, I gotta see from the beginning, where did it first start to, where did those cracks in that I gotta be a witch, I gotta be the best, where did those cracks start? So that top apex predator that they're described as, right? Where does that start to crack? Because that's when you got to start to see Manon's true character, and that character arc it's great. It's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, and I could see hints of that. For me, what I saw was a person trying to deny their own compassion, trying to deny their own humanity, and they've been trained to ignore that aspect of themselves, and yet it was undeniable, even from the jump, that it was there. And that's partly what I took to be the reason why the leader of that Blackbeak group, hated her so much, because she could see it. Like, she could see that it was there. And then that moment that JP mentioned with I say Wyvern, is that Wyvern?
Wyvern.
Yeah, however you say it, yeah.
Yeah, when she was thrown into the pit with these two creatures and sided with the clear weakling of the two just from the outside, and we basically had to give over to her instincts that this was worth a creature worth saving, and then justify that compassion to so many vicious other people and continually justify it. I thought that was compelling, in the sense that she was clearly not supposed to be doing this.
Yeah,
and that's
It's
interesting.
clearly not the way of
Going against the grain from
Yeah.
what they're supposed to be doing. So
yeah. All right, so Greg, tell us why we're wrong. Tell us why we're idiots.
You're not idiots. I just, for whatever reason, and I don't, it'll be one of those things. Book series are really hard for me sometimes to really review and judge, because there's a place for it, right? Like we're set up for, I'm imagining stuff that's going to happen in the next books that I because I have the backstory now of Manananan, that this is going to be, I'm going to enjoy and appreciate the books better moving forward because I have that backstory and that setup. For whatever reason, I couldn't get into the story aspect of it. I don't know if it was, maybe I'm not just I've never gravitated towards witches, movies and stuff. I don't watch Hocus Pocus every Halloween. I don't. Maybe it's because the movie The Witches, where they turn the kids into rats, scarred me as a child. So when I hear the word witches, I'm I don't like.
Damn,
that.
you rolled doll.
So I don't know if I just have a stigma towards it, but for me, okay. I get it. There's going to be payoff at the end, but there was no connection to the story for the most part. Yes, Baba Yaga Yellow Legs died in the last book, and that's why because they're here because of Baba Yaga, and you have that you have that connection. But for me, and I don't know how you would incorporate it then, but because there was no connection to what was going on and the stuff that I was invested in this story, I didn't care. I read the ending with Celaena's story, and I go, how is there still 50 pages left? And then I turn the page, I go, no. And I was like, dang it, we're still here. And then Elise then redeemed it with the most underappreciated characters of this series, apparently, of Dorian. At the end, but it just for me, the fact that I forgot that we had the witch battle, that once Celaena did her stuff and her arc was kind of wrapped up for this book, just I wasn't invested in it, and I didn't care.
Took the air out of it.
Yeah. You mean the Triwizard Cup? That's what it was.
Cup, yeah.
Yes. So and maybe if they were vampires a little bit, I would have gotten into it with Robert Pattinson stuff. And
fair.
But
only if they're sparkly though, right?
Right.
Is it kind of like a TV show, injecting new characters kind of in the middle of the show, and it can be real hit or miss? Sometimes it works really well. You get your Nikki and Paolo from Lost.
This was Nikki and Paolo for me. But
no, I mean that's a fair critique, and it happens in a lot of media.
This felt like the TV show is a really good analogy, and I was thinking about that at one point, because this felt like a season 3 of a TV show where you've the first season, everyone's oh, you got to read the first season, you got to watch the first season, and then the second season's so strong, and then the third season starts out where you go, what is this? These aren't the characters that I fell in love with in the first 2 seasons. What are we doing here? And you spend an entire episode with Manananan, then you spend an entire episode with Aiden, and you go, wait, why are we not spending time with the characters that we developed? And then they wait till episode 4 and they get out of the polar bear cages, and you go, oh, they're starting to develop the story here a little bit. And I really like where they're taking it. And so for me, again, I really love the world building of this book because of what happened at the end. But it was like where like episodes 8, 9, and 10 of the season redeemed the first couple episodes where I was like, this is not the strongest season to start for me. And that's kind of so like a good season that didn't start off strong when I had high hopes for it. That's how I kind of felt. Like I think I came out of this, book 2 going, I think I really love the characters and world building a little bit more than everyone else. It sounds like maybe similar to Paul, but like, and then when 3, it just was like, I wasn't invested enough in it until it got later in the book. And I'm like, oh, why did we have to spend 300 pages to get to where I wanted to get to? And so I think that was my own like bias and things there. But so
no,
I'm not
those are fair critiques.
Yeah.
No, it's a fair critique. And sometimes it's harder to get into the characters when you want, especially when you, and this happens in a lot of books. I mean, Game of Thrones is definitely guilty of this where, there's definitely characters that you're like, oh, it's a so-and-so chapter. And I don't really want to, I don't care about this character.
I want to know what
happens
crazy. With this character.
But it makes sense, right? And then it makes sense where maybe my view is there. You all have said like that you felt that Dorian and Kale are flat characters. And so JP doesn't give a rip if we don't see them the rest of the book 3, where then I literally was like, I don't care about, like Paul said at the beginning, like this witch in eating farmers in the fields. Like, I don't care. Like, I want to know what's going on with Dorian. How is he handling his horrible douche of a father who's the king right now?
He's a coward.
Ooh.
Okay, we're gonna have to get into that right now because we're gonna say hi to Tony. What's going on, Tony?
Hey T, that's my brother.
Oh,
Big
thank
T.
you for coming by, Tony. I appreciate you, sir. Because I want to get into the Adderland story a little bit here. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we have in the centerpiece here, we've got the king tyrant and his struggle to contain power as the word of Selena or Aelin starts spreading across the kingdom. We mentioned. What did you got? Aiden.
Yeah.
And his return to the city as something of a champion for the king. And then we've got Greg and I's favorite characters. No, we've got Dorian, who actually I really do enjoy. And I do think there's a lot to him.
Freeze. Did anyone else just like, whenever Aiden was always just like, my Bane is coming, just envision Bane. I mean, because as a comic book nerd, every time they said, oh, we're still waiting on Aiden's Bane coming later, I'm like, dude, is Bane just going to show up in this book? Like, I could not separate that from my mind.
And his little singlet and luchador mask.
Yes.
I never had that in my mind. But
I every single time, that's a Batman fan of me.
Fair.
But I was just like, what if Bane showed up in this? That'd be kind of interesting. It would suck.
You got to take it back to Batman.
But
it's either Super Pro or Batman. I get it. What's up, Dave?
Hey, they literally said one of the Batman.
I'm just kidding, man.
That'd be like if they're like, oh, Joker's coming here later. You're like, you can't reference that to Batman.
I mean, kingdoms often have a jester, right? It makes
exactly.
Sense.
Sorry, go ahead.
But I mean, I like Dorian a lot. I do think that there's something there to his character. Obviously, he is not. He's incredibly young. He's incredibly juvenile. He's incredibly timid as an individual, and as a result, I think he's under the thumb of his dad in so many ways. Scared of his own shadow in some ways,
and his own power.
Yeah. And then you've got Kale, who is something of a wet blanket and a bit frustrating, but he's also again really young, stuck under the thumb of a father who doesn't want anything to really do with him or wants to control him to the end of the world. So you have this dynamic happening, and they're all starting to plot against the king. They're all starting to do little things against the king. And amidst all of this, we meet a young nurse who really starts to care a lot for Dorian and starts to help him with his burgeoning magical abilities. So we've got this dynamic at the castle happening. Greg, what were your thoughts on this portion of the story? Because it seems like you enjoyed it. Like I will say, the stuff with Dorian, I enjoyed a ton. And I did. I really got a lot.
I will say,
especially when Adian was starting to come into contact with all of them.
I do think I do think this is where we've talked about this with the Sarah J. Maas books a lot. I do think this is where the age thing plays into it again, right? Like this is where the age thing throws a wrench in the plan. You have your Selena, who's supposed to be 19 in this book. She turns 19 in the book.
Yeah.
And then Rowan, who's 4,000 years old or whatever.
Fair.
Like,
Accurate.
and so like Selena is portrayed as I would think if Selena is more of a 22-year-old, 28-year-old trying to figure out, like, has trauma, she's trying to figure out this stuff. And Rowan's like a 40-year-old dude who's like, hey, here, I've been through life. Like, here's, like, this is where, like, fantasy books, I'm like, we don't need to have all these ages separated, because I think that really does screw with the thinking, because I do think we forget that Dorian and Kale are 18-year-old kids.
20 something, but yeah. They're both 20s. They're
okay,
older than Selena.
They're a little older than Selena.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, man, I didn't have my crap figured out when I was 20 something. And so from like to see something like Dorian, who has a dad, who the power that he has, I know JP joked like he is like, he has no courage, no spine. I'm like, I don't disagree with that statement, but I also am like, that's a tough thing to do. Someone that is supposed to be your father, someone that you care and love about, and you should ideally, he's a horrible person that you're starting to see through this, but it still is your father, that bond that you have. I feel like we expect the character of Dorian to be a 30-year-old who's like, this is how it is. And it makes sense that he's still a low 20-year-old trying to figure out what's going on. So like, I think this is where like the hang up with these fantasy books that John has pointed out a lot, that like Selena was this mastercraft killer when she was 15, apparently, or whatever at the time, like where those struggles are issues. So I think that plays into it a little bit. With all that being said, I did find those connections important, right? Like, I liked the Sorcy. Was it Sorcy?
Sorsha.
Something like that. Yeah.
I liked her character because what it did for me is it expanded this. You're gonna have the tension of Dorian, Kale, and Selena, or I imagine you will. Like, there still is always going to be that.
Neither.
But that's okay. That's okay. They don't need to be either. But I think like what you want to expand that a little bit. I think it'd get very boring and very repetitive if Dorian and Kale were just fighting at each other all the time because they both wanted Selena. To throw other people in the mix that then like a Rowan, which again, it's cousin, it's weird. Like, and I know they're not, but like there's still some of those like it's a little like like
Rowan's not really a cousin.
Rowan's a cousin.
Well, like from the other side of her grandmother's like elf.
It's still a little Game of Thronesy for me. I'm just saying.
No, it's not that bad.
It's not Game of Thrones. It's not brother and sister, dude.
Implications that there's going to be way worse.
Yeah. So like I liked adding her into it because what it did is it didn't dwell on Dorian and Kale and they're like, oh, I like Selena, you like it allowed that storyline to still, we knew it, we had it, but we didn't dwell in that storyline of those three in this book, which I was okay with because having Sorsa a little bit there, it added someone else and added another element that we got to explore a little bit. I do think Kale is the weakest of those, of the characters of the Wet Blanket. I do like the dynamic of Dorian, of him trying to figure out like his best friend hooked up with someone that he really liked. His dad is a horrible tyrant, but he knows that like if he tries to leave, his younger brother is going to be worse than his dad is, kind of thing. Like, and so like he's trying to figure out, what do I do as a person when there's a no-win situation here, right? Like, and I think we see that towards the end of the story. And so for me, I was compelled to Dorian's character a little bit more because of it. He feels like he's in this no-win situation. So whenever they popped up with Aiden and Kale and Dorian, I was always like perked up a little bit, like I'm curious to see where they're going to take this, because I felt like there were the routes that they could go were very open, and it wasn't like, oh, they're just doing another training montage. It's okay, like it's something different, and even Manananan was a training montage for a little bit of trying to explore her character. So like for me, I didn't know what was happening with the storyline, so I liked it.
Sure. All right, JP. How's Greg wrong?
Tell me how I'm wrong.
So here's my problem with so I actually through the first 2 books, I enjoyed Dorian more than I enjoyed Kale.
Okay.
And I still think Kale is a bit of a wet blanket. But in this book, the dynamic between Aiden and Kale or Adian or however it's supposed to be said.
However you want.
Yeah, however it's said. Like, I thought that worked better for me than Dorian and the nurse. And what I mean is, like, Kale was being challenged in the fact that he continued to repeat the same mistakes that he's made through the first 2 books in terms of his split loyalty and his like not being wishy-washy and trying to play both sides and trying to do like he's like I just don't want anyone to get hurt, and he's just like trying to like, no, I don't want anything to change. And I thought the dynamic made it more, even though he's a giant wet blanket and he's until the very end of this book is super indecisive and super like wishy-washy and where he's really going. Like I thought that the challenges that he was being forced to deal with inside his own thinking from Aiden worked better in this book. In this book, Dorian and Sorsa bored the hell out of me because I felt like the whole book, Dorian sat in one spot, which was, I'm terrified of anyone finding out that I can do anything. And all these awful things are happening in the world around him. And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe my dad did it. Oh no, he's going to find out I can do magic. Oh no. Oh, and let me just find comfort in this woman, rather than deal with any of my issues. Let me hide myself. Basically how she helps him is she just helps him hide. He just rejects who he is through the course of this book. He's taken medicine so he can't use his powers. He's rejecting himself. And I get that he's young, but I just found him very frustrating and repetitive during this whole thing. I felt like it was Dorian from book 1. I felt like, okay, I thought we'd seen a little growth in book 2, and no. And so I felt like he took a step backwards through the course of this until you get right at the very end when he's forced to confront, when his father basically puts him in a position where he has to do something. He had basically been hiding the whole book. Everyone else was trying to find a way, and Dorian had been hiding the whole book. So I found that very frustrating as a character. I felt he as a character went backwards through the course of this book. So that was me, and that's why I found it boring. I will say, Sorsa, the only thing I found interesting with Sorsa was I was convinced midway through the book that she was the little girl from the court that was the maid's daughter. And then I realized, no, it's not, because the description's wrong, and it's not. But I thought, for the longest time, that's who I thought she was going to be. And it turned out she was not. So I was like, oh, damn, she doesn't even have a connection. That's usual.
Yep.
All right, well then, Paul, how does this stuff work for you? Obviously, where the
We're
Kale.
both wrong, Paul. We both missed the point.
Yeah, we know where Kale and Dorian are heading in this universe.
Mm-hmm.
We're just basing it on this snippet, this moment. How do you feel about their? I guess you could argue, JP saying, journey in this particular book.
He's wrong.
All right, so this is actually something that I heard and I saw and I listened to. When I first went through all of this stuff, I was watching a book club kind of podcast deal, and
Wait, we're not original?
No.
Other people do book club.
Talk about this?
We are original in the fact that it is us with beards and bourbon.
Okay.
Middle-aged
Ooh.
white men. Yeah.
But they described the Otterlin aspect of this part of the story as characters from Frozen. So Adian is Kristoff, right? He's there trying to help Kale, trying to figure stuff out, do the right thing. He's working a little bit in between stuff, but he's there. He's trying to do the best that he can to do what's right.
I know where
He's
this
trying-
analogy is going to fall apart. I can already tell where this analogy is going to break. Because
Dorian-
Kale ain't no Anna. I'm just telling you right now. Anna's
better.
Anna is a way
No.
better character than Kale. So don't you dare
Kale is Anna trying
break
to figure it out,
Nope.
This whole thing's
trying to
broken
do
right
stuff
there.
and
No.
and just falls amiss. And
No.
then Dorian is Elsa.
That I can buy. I'll buy the Elsa comparison with
Does he
Dorian, but
have
it
ice
also means that he's
He's
gay.
trying
So,
to- he's
that's
trying
a
to-
whole
Anna
other-
is closer to Selena.
Yeah,
Anna is
a little bit.
such an
Anna
underloved
is a much
character.
more compelling character than Cable.
So-
okay, so
You're
but
sorry,
continue
Paul.
to-
You're talking to two dads who have watched
Oh,
Frozen
trust me, listen.
multiple times with our.
Listen, I still watch
can't let
Frozen
it go.
2. It is on repeat at my house whenever Mrs. O is doing it's graded papers. So trust me.
Fire Guy Ryan
with
came
you.
and stayed with us, and it was the movie that my girls made him watch was Frozen 2, not 1.
Yeah,
Freeze.
2.
Hold on, before Paul. I don't want to derail too much.
It's okay.
Panel, who's Olaf in this situation?
Oh, it's Mort.
Okay,
It's Mort.
biggest
It is
complaint of this
Mort.
book,
It's Mort.
Mort doesn't speak in this book. Bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fail.
Well
That's
done.
unfortunate, right?
All right, Paul, you redeemed yourself with that. Continue.
I really think that just the naive nature of both of the very young male characters that we've established, right, between Dorian and not knowing what to do with his powers, being a little afraid of his powers, but still trying to figure it out. He's trying to do things the way that he's staying safe and keeping people around him safe, the people he cares about, he's worried about them. And Kale, naive in the fact that stuff's happening around him that he doesn't know about, and he's captain of the castle guard, and he's captain of all this stuff, and he's captain of nothing because all of this stuff that's happening is just flying over the radar for him because he doesn't know who's this secret service that the king's got going around. Like it's all over the place. So I just think that they're naive and what they're doing. I do love the characters because of what happens next. Like where they go next with where they're at right now. And it's so cool to see what happens to them and how they react and what has to change or what has to stay the same or whatever it might be and who they get to interact with. It makes them better in the long run.
And as a portion of that journey, I think I can understand that. I also think that if you're trying to compare them to Disney princesses, I can appreciate that humor as well, because it does seem to, in some ways, fit. Whether you like these characters or not, they do have a Disney princess vibe to the two of them. Greg, you look like you wanted to add a little something there.
Before Greg goes again, John, where do you fall on this? Like, I want to hear your thoughts on these characters because you've mostly kept quiet tonight on everything. You've let us talk and you haven't really talked.
Well, I try to be a good host. I said I like Dorian. I do really think that Dorian is an interesting character, and I do think that it's important for him to be ground down before he can become a man. In this story, he has not in any moment in his entire life had an opportunity to stand outside dad's shadow in any way, right? He knows his dad's awful, but he also knows his dad is incredibly powerful, and it's all he's got. Right. And he feels like I have nothing to offer outside of my name. Right. Yep. So he's very much trapped in circumstance. And I do appreciate all that dynamic that he's dealing with and juggling. I think that makes him somewhat of an impotent character because within the story, he has no way to exercise change. Right. But instead, what I like about him is the struggle, the Hamlet-like struggle of I can't solve this, but I know it's all wrong and it's going to get worse. And so he needs this moment to be sort of ground down by dad so that he can no longer defend dad. He can no longer like in any way pretend like there's a peaceful solution out there. Right. He needs this moment so that he can either be sacrificed on the altar of Selena so that she can move forward as a character, or he can rise up and be a part of the solution.
So before Greg goes, and I will get out of the way, I do want to clarify my position. One little thing is even after this book, I like Dorian better than I like Kate. I just felt like in this book, he was like his sections were very boring in terms of nothing was accomplished until the very final thing. It was all him just hiding the whole book. He hid the whole book from Kale, from his dad, from Selena, from his responsibilities. He hid the whole book until the very final confrontation.
Conceal, don't feel. Like
nothing happened during those sections.
So I feel like you're saying, John, you didn't answer my question. All you told me is that you like one of them more than the other.
Yes, you didn't answer my question. That is correct.
It is the weakest part of the book, this section. And I get what you're saying in that it feels like nothing really gets moved forward until the last couple of chapters. Like nothing significant happens until the last couple of chapters. It's all just introducing Adian, and that's it. And the rest of the time, it's just a lot of spinning wheels until we get to the end when the king basically forces them all into corners, right? And Kale goes into hiding, and Dorian gets the collar slapped on him, and Adian gets thrown into the prison as bait. Like that's the function of that story. And to your point, it makes that story portion drag. And it is disappointing that it is dragging so much, because that's the only growth that happens prior to the final chapters is in Adian, right? In our understanding of who he is and his journey and his function in the story, he's the only one with function. Yeah. Everybody else just kind of spins their wheels. But Greg doesn't agree. Let's give Greg his moment.
Yeah.
So first, I just literally I'm at a conference this week, and this was one of the slides that showed up, and it's very fitting for this.
So you're telling is that note from me?
No,
you're saying, John, stop asking the characters to be 34. Because that's what I really would like, is to like.
No, but it's the idea of stop trying to make characters who are not your age, our age, like make rational decisions.
That's what I'm asking.
Well, but here's the pushback I will have a little bit with y'all of Selena. She is going through her own stuff, and I think we get to see the inner turmoil that she's dealing with a little bit, but she's going through stuff, and she's processing things, and she is running from things very similar in a different format to the characters like Dorian is running from and processing. Mm-hmm. We just don't spend as much time understanding what Dorian's thoughts are because he's not the main character of the archetype. So I think we're giving a little bit more slack to Selena of letting her process and deal with stuff and make some unwise decisions and run from situations until her hand is forced, literally, when then she's kidnapped by these monsters and creatures that she doesn't tap into her inner self until she's forced into it. And we're giving her a slide a little bit, I feel like, in this group, because we get to see the inner monologue and process a little bit more, and we're not living with that with Dorian. So that's my only pushback here is Selena's going through it just like Dorian's going through it. Dorian feels like he's in a no-win situation. Selena feels like she's in a no-win situation. She literally goes outside the magical bubble and goes, I'll take out as many people as I can, and if I go down too, that's fine. Because she's still processing, she's still trying to, and I just think we're spending and we're getting to peel back more layers of Selena, which we should, because she's the main person of the book.
Sorry, go ahead.
And I just think because of that, we're not getting to pull back as many layers of Dorian and get to see what he's processing of a no-win situation. I do feel like we're handicapping him a little bit.
I think that's totally fair, because we get more insight and more time with Selena, and obviously she's the focal point. But for me, it's less about who gets like perspective shined on them. It's more about who is proactive in their challenge, right? Because Selena is out there doing all kinds of things and pushing all kinds of like elements of her growth. And it feels in some ways, and I think to JP's point, that Dorian is like turtling here. He just crawls inside his shell and puts his fingers in his ears and is like, no, nothing's happening. I'm not going to do anything. There's no way to solve this. And in that way, he's not adding anything to the story, you know?
No, I get that, and I'm not completely. I'm just saying, like, I feel like Selena, yes, is on one end and Dorian's on the other. I think they're a little similar, more similar paths than we're giving it, and
Oh, for sure.
And that's
I think that's why I like them better in that love triangle than any of the other characters, is because I feel like they're on the same trajectory.
Right.
Did we miss anybody on that? I know that was a lot more interesting debate than I was expecting out of that section of the story.
I told you I'm in the minority of this book. Like I said that from the get-go.
Let's talk about some of the big finale stuff then. Let's talk about some of the big moments at the end here of the story, because I think that's where a lot of the juice happens in a lot of these books. But you get Rowan and you get Selena's relationship kind of coming to a place of appreciating one another. You get these crazy monsters and the assault on the town where they are doing their training, and you get the backstory of Selena's, the end of her parents' lives and how that impacted her as she comes to term with her power and has this incredible fight sequence. And then of course, meanwhile, we have the stuff at the castle playing out there, and the stuff with Manon playing out there. So Paul, I guess let's dive into the Selena portion at least, and that big final battle, because obviously that for me was the most exciting, exhilarating portion of the story is her. You get these chapters where it's her memories, you get these sequences where she's just in her ability and dealing with her magic and these creatures. It's a lot of dynamic fantasy writing happening.
Oh, definitely. And you really get to see that kind of like final stand and her going into herself a little bit and realizing that she is down there and she can pull herself out of it, but it takes her to do it. It's not everybody else doing it. It takes her to pull herself out. So it really does play a big impact for everything and the bonds that are created, like you had mentioned with Rowan.
We lost him again.
We lost him.
Nope. The reboot headsets.
Yeah, I had to reboot the headset. Made it go, Greg.
You're muted itself.
Well, as co-host, I'm gonna jump in and say this, John. What are your thoughts? Because you always wait till the end, like JP said. Yeah. So I'm gonna make you go next, and Paul can chip in when his mic works. And then
it's the best part of the book.
Oh, it's working. There you go. Paul's working.
It's the best part of the book for me. It's the part I enjoy the most. I like the buildup of these creatures. The fight in the woods with just one of them is thrilling, and it builds well to the face down with three of these things. The dramatic like failure of her powers earlier, and then you see her diving deeper into her powers here. Like all of these lovely like setup pieces play out into a really stellar dramatic finale.
Go, Paul.
The creature at the beginning when they first get to Mistward is not the same as the three at the end.
The one that they sick the skin
that was
on.
So okay, so that's like the middle. Then there was one right at the beginning where she's doing some of her
where she goes out on that trial, right?
Yes, doing some training stuff. So that character, I'm sorry, that was the one I was thinking.
We haven't seen that character again.
You don't see that character again
in this book.
No.
I assumed that character was one of the three.
No,
at the end.
That's the
one. At the end, not the skin wearers, but the guys at the end. That was one of the three at the end. So he did the same thing because he made her go like into her memories, and it was like a black. Like I got the impression that was the same thing.
It's not.
Oh. Okay.
So when we're talking about when in the early when she went out and she's like, I can do this, Rowan, screw you, and she goes out into the field and she
at the temple. It's like that one of the temples. Yeah.
Okay. That's not what I was talking about, but yes,
the one you're talking about is midway through the book. The
one that they try to take on themselves.
That's the same one, though, right? Then Paul, the one is
the one in the middle.
So yes. Let me.
All right, JP, go back.
A question here, real quick, because she goes across the field. And Rowan expects her to face a creature that's in the cage. She doesn't face that creature. He even says it's a different thing, and it's this thing that's like dark and shadow and makes her go through all her memories, which I assumed was the things at the end. because it had scared off. He even says later in the book that it scared off the things that were in the cave that he thought she was going to have to face.
So that was in the middle, wasn't it, though, JP?
That was at the beginning when she first goes across the field.
The beginning.
Yeah.
Versus the
Rowan
one that was like,
he doesn't know what that is that that came after her in the field.
Okay. See, so the one I went through it, the one in the middle, like Greg was just saying, the one that they have him chase off with the skinwalkers.
I thought that was the same one.
That is the same as the 3 at the end.
But I thought the one at the beginning that Rowan doesn't know what it is was also one of those 3.
I'll have to double check. I don't think it is.
Okay. I assumed it was because Rowan doesn't know what that is. It's not what he thought she was going to have to face.
Right. I have to double check then. Let me
because the one in the middle is the one that they're seeing is in the caves, and then they see that it's going out to hunt, and they kind of think that the 2 of us can take it, and then they realize how outmanned they are, and then they have to trick the skinwalkers into attacking it for them, which is I thought a great twist in the fight sequence. And then I believe they think it killed that, but then they see it as one of the 3 at the end. She realizes it escaped the skinwalkers. Yeah.
So Paul, finish your thoughts on that before you got muted, and then we'll go to John.
I really like that, Aelin has to go into herself to pick herself up. It's not somebody else. It's not an outside influence. Even though there are outside influences, Rowan's there, and through her memories, her parents and her uncle, everybody is kind of like saying do it, but it's young Aelin trying to convince the slightly older Aelin. It's like, hey, you can do this. You're there. You're still here, right? We're still able to pick ourselves out of this. But you got to do it. You got to step up. You got to try. Because if you don't, then you're just gonna hit this. You're gonna hit this kind of the bottom of the well, and it's not really the bottom, right? It's only like a third of the way down or a quarter of the way down. You can really tap into it if you want to. So that was kind of cool for me. The bonds that she created with Rowan in that instant, and that appreciation, I think really, play well for the rest of the interactions in the book, and the end results once we get there after the big fight sequence. I really liked it.
Okay. Yeah, Greg, do you want to add anything to that sequence of the story and how you felt about how Celaena's reveal of maybe the more details around her parents passing and stuff?
Did John think I was going to forget that it's his turn?
I thought I answered.
He tried to.
No, you need to explain a little bit more, and then JP and I will. I'm not. John gets to sit back.
He's
John.
Most of this. I'm not giving his opinion.
I've heard all your points. I can gather mine. No, you're chiming in now.
No. My favorite part of the book, the most dramatic stuff, built well upon the battles in the forest with the one creature and the skinwalkers, and her powers really like failing and near dying, and then having to dig deeper into that well, adding in the flashback chapters. I was riveted in this section, and this was the juice of the book for me. And it all worked because of all the slow-paced setup, slow burn stuff at the beginning. So this was the payoff. This was the cherry on top for me. And this was the juice. This is the stuff I like the most. So there you go. Did that answer it enough?
JB? Did it answer it?
He went to you next.
No, I'm saying, did that answer it for you, JB?
Yeah, that's fine. It's weak,
that works.
It's fine.
All right, we'll go on.
Sweet sauce, but it's okay.
All right, Greg.
Again, I agree with everything you said. Like, this is where like those longer sections where I'm like it pays off. I will still say, like, one of my issues I have with this book, and it's my own personal hang up. I can't picture in my mind, for whatever reason, what Celaena looks like when she shifts, and it drives me insane. I can't get the image in my mind of what. Because like I have Celaena as like a human, and then like when they say she shifts, I can't get that in my mind, and so like it drives me insane, and I get lost sometimes and going like, what does she look like? What does that look like?
Okay,
that
was throwing you off. Okay, that's my yes, that's a good complaint because that's not a big deal. I said it's my own hang up, but like.
because I get the and then lost going like, wait, what does she look like? Like, I don't think it ever gets described, or I missed it well enough to say like what she looks like in the form that she shifted in, and it drives me insane because I can't picture it in my head. I'm like,
yeah, they really focus on how it makes her feel.
yes, and that's okay, but like it's a hang up for me, not a bad thing. Again, I love this section of the book, but I'm just saying, like, every time when she shifts, my mind goes to, what does she look like? And I spend 5 minutes in my head going, but what does it look like first?
So then,
and
what
then
do you, I
go
gotta
on
know
and read.
what are you picturing then?
I don't know.
Is
like,
it like Fern Gully and you're picturing one of the little nymphs?
I
Or what are we
almost
doing here?
picture it more like Fern Gully mixed with Avatar.
Okay.
Like the creatures from Avatar. Like I don't know. It doesn't describe it for me well. Like, and so like I always get hung up on that. But
okay,
that's neither here nor there. I think again, Selena is the strongest character in this story. This is, and as should be, because that's what's being built around her. Those moments where she, you know, she gets those moments where she thinks of, like, it reminds me of faerie, of where it's like, oh, I'm gonna trick the, what is it, the serial or
Surreal.
the serial killer, and we're gonna lock her in. Like, she has those moments where it's very much like she thinks through, like, I have an idea, it's probably gonna get me killed, and that's, she had the idea. She's like, what if we get this one character to get surrounded by the skinwalkers, like, and that'll get it killed. Like, she thinks through things, and I like, those were those moments where I'm like, okay, and getting to see her kind of discover her powers, discover who she is, man, it resonated with me, and I'm like, I love that, and I thought that was really cool. So like, when those moments of her in the woods, and then getting like the battle scene right outside, like where she's like, go Rowan, you know, stay inside, I'm gonna go outside the magical bubble, and like, in those moments, I was like, that's where it really built it for me. I'm like, okay, I'm here, and I get excited when I'm ready. I'm like, yes, let's go.
All right, well then, JP, I'm gonna spin it a little further for you. So like, yeah, certainly talk about how you're feeling about how Selena's rise to power works for you, and then maybe her confrontation with her aunt and kind of how that plays out.
So before I get into this, I'm going to throw Greg a bone here.
Do it.
I agree with him in terms of that the ending is out of order. The Mannion and the Dorian and Kale stuff should be before the Selena stuff. Like, the Selena stuff carries so much weight and is so like important to the overall arc, to like then jump back to the others at the end is sort of anticlimactic. Like it like, for me. So I'm gonna agree, because you mentioned that early in the thing that you're like, I thought we were done, and then I turned the page, and it's like, man, and like, I totally get that, because there's so much less weight to Mannion becoming the leader of the riders and everything else than what Selena's going through here. I do feel like that's out of order. So that's
I will say, I think it should have been Mannion, Selena. I would have been okay then if it was Mannion, Selena, and then the Dorian stuff, because then it sets it up for the next book. That's the only thing I would say.
And it would have to go that way, because the king freaks out because Elaine is back, and she's only back because of her defeating the
Mannion should have had.
I would have had it was Mannion, Selena in her confrontation with the creatures, the king freaking out, then Selena versus her aunt and her decision to go back.
Perfect. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's the way I would have. But anyway,
I'm okay with that.
My thoughts on this, I thought the sequence with Selena and her having to dig herself out of the, like, you guys have said everything. I thought it was super well done. I thought it was a great addition to everything she'd been through in terms of the monsters they faced, the skinwalkers, this other creature, the thing in the cave where she gets the sword that's clearly going to be an important part of everything going forward. Like, I thought all of that was really well done, really swell. And it really like drove home her having to deal with herself, for lack of a better term, self-hatred. Like, she did not like who she was. And she blamed her guilt. She blamed herself so well. And it was so well, like them forcing her into her mind to relive what she thought was failings and having to like come to terms with it was super well done. And her coming back out, finding her way out herself, like she had to do it herself, was, yeah, you guys said everything. Like, it was easily the best part of the book. The follow-up then of her dealing with her aunt was very interesting in the fact that, like, to me, there was a shift. Like, and we'd seen it a little bit with her and Rowan. We'd seen the shift coming, and like the way their dynamic shifts, and the way he is torn, knowing that taking her there most likely is going to be a bad outcome. And we see her growth, though, in her terms of like, okay, I know how to deal with this person. like she plays her aunt in the sequence.
Yeah.
Like her thousands of year old great grand aunt or whatever, like it is, because it's the sister of her grandmother, as who this woman is or whatever, her great aunt. And like, she outsmarts her in this sequence. And basically, like, which I'm sure there's going to be consequences for. Like,
yes.
Well, but you're right. She does it even before they get there, right? Because Rowan was like, "Oh, tell me this," and she goes, "No, you're still connected to Maeve. Like, I'm not going to do that."
Yeah. So she's like, she's plotting. Like, Rowan is trying to give her, like, you can see Rowan is doing as much as he can to like try to forewarn her what she's going to walk into, but knowing where his loyalties lie. But like Selena, like, I thought that was very impressive growth from her, because we've gotten through the whole story that like she's this great assassin, which obviously means that she's like should be very good at planning and thought, step by step and working out.
Yeah.
And we really hadn't seen it until this moment. She's pretty much flown by the seat of her pants for the most part until we get this moment with Maeve. And we see that she, like, the mind matches some of the physical abilities here in terms of her ability to like control the situation. So I thought that sequence was really well done. And I think that should have been, that and the aftermath of that should have been the end of the book in terms of like, for me. But you can disagree, but like, that's just for me. Like, I felt like that was truly the climax of this arc for her growth in this arc. And she's the main character. So I felt like that should have been the end.
Yeah, and Paul, she ends up with a little slave there at the end. How's that? What were your thoughts on on Rowan switching sides, sort of?
I think it was great. The idea of saving him essentially was exactly what she needed. She needed to find a way to be okay with herself in order to be okay with people. Anybody else wanting to help her, right? And her recognizing that he's been trying to help her, trying to give her that info. It's like JP was just saying, she recognizes that he's still connected, so we've got to figure out a way how to get him unconnected so that he can be truly helpful, because they created such a bond. I really like that part. I think it's super well put together, her perspective, right? Even though it's a very short amount of time for that change and for that ability to go from being down in the dumps, literally self-loathing and just feeling horrible about herself, to having the confidence to approach somebody that she knows is powerful, that she knows probably has the upper hand, she knows that has all of this experience, have been around forever, and still be able to go in with a plan and go in, coming out on top in her mind, at least, because the ring does, for the moment at least, the ring doesn't play as big of a factor to her at that point. So it's like, if she knows that she can tug on some heartstrings, she's going to take advantage of it. So she plays, like JP was saying, she plays her aunt beautifully. So I look forward to hearing what you guys think will happen because of this.
I mean, obviously a lot, I would assume. But Greg, what do you?
Aunt is going to be supportive.
Well, Paul, you're gonna have to wait a little bit, because apparently we got to read Assassin's Blade next, according to the order. So I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen next. But
Assassin's Blade literally should take you 2 days.
I already read it. So
This
Yeah,
took me
it's
2 days. So I think
that took you 2 days.
2 days.
Oh yeah. Once you get into it and you get if you're invested.
No. I'm talking about Heir of Fire. It took JP 2 days.
Yeah.
Heir of Fire took me, 2 days. A weekend.
I could see it in a weekend.
Nope.
Well, okay. It took me less than 48 hours. It was spread from Friday night till Sunday afternoon.
Just still no, but no.
I didn't have anything else going on. I was sitting around. I was reading a book. I was still on a step count at that point. I couldn't.
All right, I'll allow that.
So
no, this I thought again. JP and I agree. I think this should have been like almost the ending, and then the stuff that happens with Dorian that we'll get to right there. Like that was it. This sets the stage that she's smart. When she gets outside of her own head, she is a really capable assassin, right? Like, and that's what it should be. I do think like sometimes it toes the line a little bit of like, I'm supposed to believe that she's just like cream of the crop assassin as a 19-year-old. And then like, there's all these like inner struggles sometimes, which I think do conflict a little bit for me. But like with where it's at of like, if she is who Sarah J. Maas has created her to be, this is how she should act in that moment. Cause right, like the chapter ends with, she's like, whip Rowan, his best friends are going to whip him. And you're like, ooh, what's she going to do? And she's like, she pulls out the most boss move ever. And it's like, nah, listen, this is what's going to happen. You're going to give me what I want. You're going to suck it up, shut your mouth, know your role, right? Like, that's kind of how she treats her. And I'm like, yes, like, let's go. Like, I was like, and this is like, I think the first time I do think I like when she took it to Maeve, I do think I like audibly on the plane, like, let's go, queen. Let's go. Like, I was like, let's go. Like, yes, queen, do it. Like, I embraced that inner, and as she embraced her queenness, I was like, yep, I'm embracing it. Like, it was a very Beyonce move for her. And I was like, I love that for you. And so like I liked everything about that moment because like that's who I expect. Now I know I still have to read Assassin's Blade, but like so take that out. Like moving forward, I'll be frustrated if we backtrack a little bit. Like that JP has said, like he felt like we backtracked with Dorian of like his character a little bit. Like she's dealt with this a little bit now. Like I hope we don't like go back to where it's like a struggle of her like trying to figure out who she is as much as we have these past 3 books.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see that being a frustration because he does. This is a great moment, great character moment. I love the way she's uncomfortable with Dorian pledging to her, but she still takes it on. I like the way that relationship grows from one that's very cantankerous with differing perspectives to one of mutual kind of appreciation. So yeah, it's a great character strategy moment that I don't think she's had a lot of up to this point. So yeah, works a ton for me. And yeah, it would be a shame if there was backsliding from this point where she's like back to being like, you know,
there will be
super unsure
because.
Well, that one's a flashback.
Again, that's why I take that out. Like,
yeah,
I'm okay with that. No. That's like going like Darth Vader's a boss, and then going back to like episode 1 of Phantom Menace and going, oh, he's not as much of a boss as I thought he was. Like he was pretty cool in Empire Strikes. This book was very much Empire Strikes Back, right? Like, and I'm a feeling Assassin's Blade's going to be like Revenge of the Sith, like
Phantom Menace,
Phantom Menace, or Attack of the Clones.
Way more Phantom Menace.
Attack of the Clones is where he's the whiniest. So
I don't think it's that whiny. Well, then I mean, the Manon story, a Manon story. I feel like he's a little anticlimactic because kind of it has to only end one way. Right, it kind of ends the way we predicted.
That's right. It should have been the first thing dealt with.
Yeah, I get that. But we obviously need to spend a little time on the end of the Dorian story as we get to see the king basically reveal that he kind of is in on the traitors in his midst, and then slaps a collar on his son, throws Aedion in the jail as bait for Selena at some point, and then Kale takes off. He bolts like a rabbit and basically is out in the world, ideally doing good for Selena somehow, somewhere, but we don't quite know what that's going to be because he's just basically on the run.
Yeah.
Greg,
Yes
what were
and
your
no.
thoughts on how you seem to like that storyline more than most
I
of
do.
us?
So I listen. I've said it from the get go. Like, I'm Team Dorian. Kale has been a wet blanket. I will say he doesn't. Yes, he runs to get out of that situation, but he does like instantly team up with Ren or whatever his name is, and is like, hey, Aiden is stuck in prison for all we know. I don't know if I want Dorian to be dead or alive here in this situation because I don't know what benefits us most. So yes, he runs to get out of that situation, but he doesn't run to hide. He runs to say, I'm going to go figure out what's going to happen. What do we need to do to make moves to happen next? So like,
Yeah,
because I listen, I've been knocking on Kale as much as everyone else on this group. But I don't think like he runs as a coward. He runs to preserve himself so he can live the fight another day. We see that in comics. We see that in every storytelling. A character who goes, this is a no-win situation for me. I need to get out, and then I need to regroup and figure out how we can then now win the situation. So I like that Aiden doesn't die right off the bat. So like I'm assuming that's going to be an important character moving forward, trying to figure out as much as I liked what Sorsha was, I do think that was the right move to kill her. And there's never say never in comic books and fantasy books, but she's done. Right? Like, but I do like that aspect of, because now it's going to push the storyline with Dorian. Now is obviously as his collar, so the dad has control of him. And things like this that it's going to do. I don't know how that collar works. I don't know how much he's going to be internally wrestling with, like his, look at Paul just like not wanting to say anything. Bless your heart. Paul is trying to not make any facial expressions because
Well, you can turn your camera off for a second if you need to. Like,
no, this is my favorite end part.
Yeah. So like to see, like, I don't know if he's gonna have if there's gonna be this inner struggle of like he understands what's going on, but he can't do anything about it because of the collar. And is he like, I want to kill my father because what he did to my lover, and I don't. So like that part intrigues me, the unknown of that, and also that dynamic of like then his friends are gonna have to, I'm assuming, gonna figure out like Dorian is a powerful force moving forward with what he has now. He's under his dad's control. What do we do as Aiden? Do we try and save Aiden first, so then Aiden and Kale and Ren and Stimpy all can get together and try and save Dorian? I don't know. When does Selena come into this scenario? And so like those are those moments where I'm like, I loved how it ended, because as much as this book dragged for me at the beginning, I can't wait. Like, I'm dreading a little bit to read Assassin's Blade because I don't care. I don't care about the past. I want to hop into the next stuff that's going on. Like, there's a little bit like even in this book where they did the flashback of her, and the maid that's kind of like saving Selena when she's like, and like, here's your necklace that you wear that the mom gave her that saved her from all the magic that we didn't really talk about too much. And that's something that Selena's processing of like, oh, if I didn't have this, my mom had this, so she'd still be here. But like that flashback, as important as it was for a book, I was like, I don't care about the flashback right now. I want to know what's going on in the story. So there's a little bit of me like, I don't want to read Assassin's Blade because I don't care about the past. I know where she's at. I want to keep going.
It's not only a fair concern, it's a fair assessment of that set of novellas. And it's necessary. And I feel, having read it, I feel like it's necessary, but I totally understand that people would feel like it's light. You know, it's like a Diet Coke after a really, you know, interesting drink that this one was, you know.
It's a have any of you guys read the Wool Dust Silo books?
I haven't. It was one of the books that Wool was given to me as one of the books to read while I was laid up. That it's still in my stack because I went down a rabbit hole with all of these.
Yeah,
so I haven't gotten there yet.
So
who would make you do that?
I don't know.
Not to go too much of a sidetrack, but Silo is a TV series on Apple TV right now.
Yes,
they're on season 2. It's based off of season 1 and 2 is basically based off of the book 1, which is called Wool.
Okay,
and Wool tells you the story that you're going. The next book, which is I think like I don't even know, it might be Dust or something. The second book in the series literally goes to tell you how you got to there, which is important and as good as fine. But I'm like, I don't want to spend an entire book going backwards because I've already in this mindset. I want to know what's going forward.
But luckily, this book is only like.
So I'm sorry that I'm going to put you through it because you're going to read it.
I'm going to read it. No, it's going to happen.
I will be done. I will be done with this book by Monday.
Oh wow, you've already started it.
No, I haven't. I'll start it.
Oh.
I finished the other book I was reading.
Well, after we're done tonight, we're going to discuss what's coming up next for.
I know. I tried to get John to discuss it with me earlier because I was trying to read some books, and John's like, "Oh, wait 5 hours, so you don't have to."
I'm not ready to make that kind of a bold decision yet. Well, let's finish out this discussion of this final section of the book here. JP, when it came to the end in the King's throne room and kind of what it set in motion, what were your thoughts?
So I want to. You guys as a group, and me in particular, like even when I wasn't on the show with you, have hated on Kate. I will say that in this sequence, well, first of all, I love that Aiden throws himself on the grenade right at the beginning of the sequence. Like it shows
he Bruno Mars right off the bat.
Like he, in many ways, like to this point in the story, he appears to be more important to Selena Aylin's future than any of the others in terms of like what he could potentially help her do. Okay. And yet he's also, because of that, because of who he is, he's the first one to be like, okay, I'm going to save these other people. And he throws himself on the grave. So for me, I thought that was a great addition to like, I really enjoyed Aiden or however you pronounce his name, like in this book as an introduction to a character.
Okay.
I want to follow up with, like, we have hated on Kale a lot, deservedly, because he has been like this. We've called him a wet blanket. We've called him like wishy-washy. We've called him indecisive. He's
JP, this is you, not all.
Well, he's trying to have. Okay, I have. He's trying to have it both ways.
I'm on board with that too.
He is more so than even like it's him taking the stand against Dorian's father. Like the way I read it is as much what inspires Dorian to finally make, as much as her death does. It's Kale standing with him that ultimately like pushes Dorian to resist. Finally,
yes. Okay.
And I feel like that moment for Kale is super important because he finally picks a side.
Mm-hmm.
Like he finally so I'm hopeful that he becomes, because we've talked about that that they're young, they're low 20s and everything else. Like I'm hopeful that ultimately becomes an important moment for him and he grows as a character in the coming books. Like, because I feel like for him it's as much, if not more, of a watershed moment that he chooses a side as it is that then prompts Dorian to finally stand up to his dad. Like, and so I want to give Kale a little bit, and although I do love that, like, as he's escaping, that he tries to talk to Morton. Morton still won't talk to him because he's like, you're not worthy. Like,
be gone.
Although the fact that we got no Morton in this book is
that's the biggest travesty.
Yeah, it's the biggest travesty.
It's a crime.
But so I want to give Kale some credit here, but I thought it was a good sequence for all three of them, and it just drove home for me that I felt like there was so much just treading water with the two of them during this whole book that and it was necessary to get to this moment probably, but it just frustrated me during the course of the book that those two characters I felt like just treaded water the whole book. before they got to this moment. But the moment itself works really, really well in terms of finally pushing the two of them to take a stand. It'll be very interesting to see where Dorian is now that he's not in control of himself. But I also think it's going to be super interesting. Like, if Kale at this point, free of his father and free of his responsibility in terms of like being the captain of the guard, and I'm like, I gotta be loyal, and like finally free to do as he wants. Like with it, you know, he's on the run, but finally free to like make his own choices without. Does he become the man that like that clearly Sarah wants him to be in terms of like, because he's prominent in this book, or does he continue to flounder? And it'll be very interesting to see as we go forward. Like for me, as much as like I don't want to see Selena like backtread, if Kale's going to be a big part of these books going forward, I want to see him not flounder and actually be decisive and move forward on a path.
Sure.
Like is he a man or is he a Muppet?
Dedicate himself to it. Yeah. Like, so for me, that's where I'm interested. Like for me, the moment is more about what it sets up for like those two characters. Like, can they finally show their potential and like move? And actually now that the die is cast, can they be truly useful to her? Can they truly be, because I still feel like even in this book, even with the additions of Rowan, even with the additions of Adian, even with the additions of Mannion, that the supporting cast still doesn't quite reach where she is as a character.
Right.
Whereas in the other books, like the other series, I don't feel like Feyre's doesn't quite live up to her supporting cast. Like she doesn't quite like she's a good character, but she's not like clearly like, okay, she's a step ahead of her supporting cast. Like her supporting cast are just as interesting, if not more so, than she is.
More. And you haven't even read book 4 or 5, so
and I haven't read book 4 or 5, but like whereas this is so far like ahead of her supporting cast, and this book helped that. Like they need to build on that moment to truly like give the world what it needs to be. So that's where I'm at with that.
No, that's fair. Paul, okay, last one. How do you feel?
Yet. Not last.
Yeah.
You haven't said yet.
What? Greg hasn't gone yet?
No,
John, you haven't gone.
You haven't said your thoughts on that moment.
I thought I started this whole thing off.
No, shut up.
You guys don't give me credit.
Liar.
All right, Paul. Thoughts on the throne room scene, the ending for the glass castle portion?
I liked it a lot. That made the pacing of how Kale and Dorian's portion of this book, that made that pacing so much better, right? It made it worthwhile to follow how Dorian was feeling, and like JP said, like, okay, is that support that he had that he didn't realize he had because they're horrible at communicating with each other, even though they're best friends for like 3 books now. He didn't realize he's got it from Kale no matter what, and that's all he needed, and he's gonna stand up like JP said. So that made it all the more heartbreaking for him to get the collar on, because we've seen what people with the collar on, how they react and how they act, and kind of how, like, even when we go back to that great ending for Aelin going against the 3, like we saw how one of them was like had that moment of clarity, and it was like he thanked her for decimating him. So like, what does that mean for Dorian moving forward, and where is that going to go with this guy that's just got all of the raw magic in the world? We didn't talk a lot about it, but it's there. So it's just like, okay, here we go now. Now we got. Now we truly
got a weapon now. But like,
now we got a weapon to do.
He's got a weapon that can use magic in an area where there's no magic.
Yeah,
like it's not like the other continent. Like
it raises so many great questions, and what's going to happen to Adian? What's going to happen to Kale? You know, is he gonna figure it out? Right? Is he going to be able to rally the troops? Right? The couple of rebels that are out and about in Otterland. You know, what can he do? So I really like this part. That's why I'm super happy that this was after the Aelin stuff, because this truly is the driving
catalyst.
force. Yeah, this is the driving force for the
Well,
next book.
I think we're all in agreement. Like, this part needed to happen after that, but Mananon needed to happen earlier.
Yeah, I still like Manon. I haven't gone back. I agree. It's not in the right spot, but it's important too for her character, you know, in that, you know, united front of her group or the united front of all the witches.
Right.
Like, what's going to happen here? Yeah. So it really was good. What about you, John? You gotta say something.
Because
that wraps it all up. We're done.
The rebels have a cause. Yeah.
No dodging, John. Let's go.
Gosh, you haven't raked over the coals on this show tonight. No, I thought it was.
Should be.
I do the same thing when I do the indie show. Is I'm letting everybody else talk, and I don't give my opinion very much. And like, you need to give your opinion.
I feel like we call you out on it, though.
You do.
I feel like I gave my an opinion on most of this part of the story. It is the best part of this section, and it is riveting, and some important deaths that need to happen, and some important character moments that need to happen, and a lot of setup for the pieces that are going to hopefully impact Celaena's rise in the next few books. So, you know, what Kale does, what Dorian does, and how they are now a part of officially confronting this king and dealing with this king, I think is going to be really important. And so incredibly enjoyable. Doesn't come close to the Celaena portions of the story, but just as interesting, and I think worked well for me for sure.
So I got a question for all of you guys then.
Okay.
The additional characters that we've added, right? We've added.
Thinks he runs this show?
No.
But he's read
certainly
further,
not.
so he's asking us what we. I
want to think a little bit ahead. The additional characters that we've added, is it too many? A lot of the stuff that I go through, that I see on these books, there's so many diverse characters, right? We got so many things happening in so many different places. My question for you guys, is it too many?
No, with a caveat.
Okay, what's the caveat?
No, but I don't care about Manon.
Like, here's the thing, though. It's 6 characters. It's not too many. Like, it's really, like, you're talking Aiden, Kale, Dorian, Celaena, Rowan, and Mananon, as Greg likes to say. Like, it's 6 characters. 6 characters is not too many to follow. Like,
okay.
As far as like focal characters, not like obviously the
characters.
King and Maeve are important, but like they're not.
They're antagonists.
On the same level.
They're the antagonists.
Yeah. And I think it depends on how active you are in reading fantasy books, because anybody who's read The Wheel of Time is going to be like, oh, she's just getting warmed up. You need like 27 other characters. You need like 800 more books. You're
Has
just
anybody
started.
finished The Wheel of Time, though?
No, even the writer didn't feel
No,
it.
no one's finished The Wheel of Time. So, like, not an example.
No. But I mean, Game of Thrones, same way, also unfinished.
Yeah.
But like the idea is like in typical fantasy novel writing, this is just like the first layer of that 7-layer dip. So for me, like I think no, this is right where it should be.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
That is our goal. Chaos.
That's what we're bringing.
Our goal.
Well, I'm glad you're staying, buddy, because we are ending. We are wrapped up. But we're going to go backstage. We're going to chat about what is the next step. Obviously, the next novel in our Court of Beards and Bourbon Maas novels will be Assassin's Blade. Whether that is the next one we do a live stream on or not definitely is important. I don't know what that belt means, but I'm excited for Bearded Comic Bro.
That's the belt that I beat Chaos in comics on a comic book trivia
Nice.
from like 4 years ago. So whenever he chimes in and like makes a smarky comment, like I just got to bring this bad boy up.
The links for everybody's channels are down below. All the information is down below, and we will be back. There will be more Beards and Bourbon and fantasy novel. ideally quote unquote smut talk in the future. So hopefully we'll help JP find the smut. We'll find it.
Not
But
yet.
still looking.
Thank you to these guys for hanging for a couple hours. Thank you for in the chat hanging out for a little bit, and we'll catch you guys all again soon.